It's the waitingfornextyear.com podcast. I think it's been since November since I talked to my next guest on the line from 603 Browns. Is that plural?
No.
603 Brown. Mike Burgermeister.
Yeah. Hey, Craig. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Sorry it's been so long.
It's okay. I've been quiet.
And you're kind of a Browns guy, and there's been no actual real live football things to talk about for quite some time.
Yeah. I mean, put it this way. It's strange. This time last year, I did a thing with my readers where we did a reader mock all the way to number 35. And I invited each one of my readers to do a post on their piece, and the draft was a big deal. And this year, I was just, meh.
And I think that's when you first recommended to me that we talk to Bodie about posting for our website.
Well, if I made that recommendation, good on me. But,
you did.
He's always been a strong commenter, and obviously he's a terrific poster. So,
and you know, it only took me 9 months to listen to you.
Oh, I can't take credit for that one, Craig. You knew he was good. So,
yeah, no, it's true. Yeah. So anyway, it's just funny how big and small the world is simultaneously. But so.
Actually, that's interesting. Yeah, Bodie, I think, took 2 slots there, and he did, as you know, comprehensive research, and he really knocked it out of the park for me in that mock draft exercise.
Yeah. Well, and you're also, if you could turn your volume down just a scotch, I'm getting a little bit of feedback. You're also the guy who kind of hosts, enables the A to Z podcast.
I am. So Zach is a friend of the site, and this goes back to the time when we were all just Cleveland Frowns, Cheddar Bay participants. And yeah, he and Andre wanted to start podcasting, and they came to me. And well, they didn't come to me. I was on a mailing list, and I raised my hand. I said, hell, I'll host it. And they took me up on it. So that's been terrific because, as you know, because I solicited your input before it got off the ground, but podcasting is terrific. It's so easy to consume, and those two in particular have such a nice way on air that their podcasts are very popular, and they do a very nice job with them. Although I have to get after them because I think it's been about 2 weeks since the last one.
See, and I keep thinking the further along I get, I initially thought that it was, because it's spoken word format, I kind of thought of it as a replacement for radio. But the more I think about it, the more I think it's a supplement for radio and almost like 2 different art forms. It's like, some people play orchestra music, other people play bluegrass. It's music. It's all music, but it's different, completely different genre.
It is hard to categorize, right? Because it feels like spoken word posts or posts that you can consume while not sitting down and reading. So you can just put on your headphones while you're on a treadmill and consume it that way. But as a supplement for radio, I think my take is that it may surpass radio because, for example, there are certain radio hosts in Cleveland or shows that I'm not big fans of, but occasionally they get good interviews. And so instead of having to listen to the entire show, I can just click on their pod center and consume, Brian Windhurst for 15 minutes and not have to deal with the rest of the show.
Which is interesting because, as long as we're going to talk about that specific show, a show that I like, by the way, I will listen to it live, even segments I'm not interested in sometimes if I'm driving around, because it's easier to just kind of leave the radio on. But I really don't care about the Ryder Cup between WKNR and the Pittsburgh station, and they spend a lot of time talking about that. Some people love that, though, because it brings them inside Tony Rizzo's world, and it makes them part of his crew. And that's where I'm talking about talk radio being different than podcasting, because you are there 3 or 4 hours a day, and you are kind of like somebody's coworker sitting in their cube with them. And so that kind of radio, while maybe it isn't my favorite, I would be crazy to say that it has no value.
I probably need to pull it back a little bit with my criticism of Cleveland radio, because I don't consume it like you would.
Sure.
When I'm here, when I'm driving, basically when you're captive in your car, that's when you're listening to the radio. And so if I were out in Cleveland, I'm sure I'd listen to more and probably give them more runway than I do, because as it stands, I'll just stream it from my laptop, and if it's not doing it for me, I'll just click it off after 30 seconds. But if you're in the car, you'll probably ride it out a little bit.
Plus, you're already on that venue where podcasts are just as easy to pull up as radio.
Correct.
For me, it's still a little bit easier. It's not hard to Bluetooth my phone to my car, and I do it all the time. But at the same time, if the Bluetooth stops working for any reason whatsoever, it is super simple for me to pull up the AM or FM dial and listen to whatever they're talking about, and it's better than not listening to anything. And so that's actually, my ringing endorsement for Sports Talk right now.
You know what, though? Lately here in Boston, the alternate of the old CD player and my own homemade Led Zeppelin greatest hits CDs has been far superior to Boston Sports Talk Radio, where, mother of God, everyone is out to get the Patriots, and it was a big setup, Craig. The NFL had it in for the Patriots, and
we're going to talk about that later. I'm not doing that now.
Okay, but just in case we don't get to it, just be sure that we point out that the Patriots would have won whether the balls were inflated or not, because that's an important point to make. I don't think it's been made enough either. But let's go on to the Browns.
All right, before we get to Tom Brady and deflated footballs and the NFL and their punishment, let's talk about the Cleveland Browns draft. I certainly, in my everyday life, I get plenty of opportunity to talk about the draft, and people ask me, "Hey, what'd you think of the draft?" And everybody wants to say what they thought of it as well. And I said something that I absolutely believe, but I think is really kind of stupid when you really break it down. I told somebody recently over the weekend that I really like the Browns draft, assuming the players can play. Which is on its surface maybe one of the dumbest things that you can say, but it's absolutely true from the standpoint I like the methodology, I like the accomplishment on paper. Now it's up to whether the scouts got it right more than they got it wrong, and hopefully 52% of the players drafted can play.
Yeah, I mean that's what it comes down to. Maybe that's why I didn't do a mock draft, because you do enough of those pre-draft analyses, and you realize that you don't know anything. And it was a couple of years ago where I was like in high dudgeon over John Hughes, what a wasted pick, and not a value pick, and blah blah blah. Well, you know what? The guy can play, and so I don't care if you're taking him in the 3rd round, 6th round, 2nd round. And we see that every year. So can he play or can he not play? And that's all you can go by.
And that's a really good point too. And the website, our website's draft coverage was great this year.
Yes, it was.
Joe Gilbert and some of the guys really did a great job. But I personally was like you. I think I've been burned out on the draft since, and I've been. My patient zero was not John Hughes. My patient zero was the number of words that I wasted talking about RG3.
Yeah.
And spending all that time talking about a player who would never play a minute, at least not yet, for the Cleveland Browns. And it just felt like, am I really going to get wrapped up in this process that in the end might have absolutely, positively nothing to do with my stated mission in life as a sports commentator, writer, whatever you want to call what I do? It had nothing to do with anything.
That's part of it. I'll add on another layer to why draft projections are so futile. Last year's draft, Justin Gilbert, my goodness, his arm length is freakish. They're like 20% longer than your typical arm length, and he's got a great 40 time. His vertical is great. He's 6'1", so he's not only tall but he's long because you add in the arm length, and he can run and he can cover. He's from a passing conference. Blah blah blah. I loved it. I love Justin Gilbert pick. Well, there you go, right? And at the same time, Craig, I was so metric centric. Chris Borland from Wisconsin, yeah, sure he can play football, but geez, stubby arms, he's got like T-Rex arms, he'll never play. And I know he retired, but that doesn't change the fact that he was a hell of a good football player. So it really, I don't know what to do with draft. Maybe that's part of it too. Is I don't know.
And that's really what it comes down to, because everything you said about Justin Gilbert was and is still true, and we saw it in training camp. He was at a different level physically and athletically than his teammates, and I mean, to see him standing next to Buster Screen last year, and to see him making cuts on the practice field against receivers. Versus guys like Pierre Desir and whatever else, it was amazing. He was incredible. And everything that we know about Justin Gilbert says that, from a social and a maturity standpoint, that was his issue, adjusting to the NFL. And he couldn't get his head into the NFL. The adjustment period was really awkward. And there's no way for guys like you and me to look at Mel Kiper, any of those indicators, and come up with, oh, well, this guy's got risk factors and he might never develop the ability to be a pro.
Well, it's interesting, Craig. So one observation on this year's Browns draft that I saw, and I guess I kind of like, is that, maybe the Browns also didn't have that sort of insight either. And so, they went for the productive, can play football and demonstrated it in college sort of prospect. For example, Borland. I mean, he was an effective player, and all reports are, quite frankly, Danny Shelton, he looks like a big fat guy, and I don't know how healthy it is to be that wide, but you know what? In college, he was very productive, and he has the dreaded high motor. and he throughout the entire draft process for the Browns, all the way down to that guy from USC who is Bullard, I guess is his name. But a lot of scouts didn't like him, but he was very productive at USC, and it seems like the Browns might have skewed in that direction. We're looking for guys who have demonstrated that they can play in college. And we'll go from there. And
on top of that, did you see the picture that we posted when we posted the Nate Orchard signing news?
Well, I did with the family picture, all in Browns gear.
Yeah, so
that's nice. Yes,
and not the Browns gear, but the Browns selected a productive player who was already married with a child, and I don't know how much that played into it for the Browns, but if you look at a guy like that in his life situation, presumably, versus guys like Johnny Manziel and Justin Gilbert, who are still trying to figure out what it means to be an adult.
Or the widely underreported Trent Richardson. Didn't he have 3 kids?
Right.
Yeah, so there's that.
Absolutely true. And so it just makes you wonder. I'm not saying that you can't draft a bad boy or you can't draft a guy with some character concerns, but I think more often than not, it's got to, that a guy needs to be able to play number one. But number two, if you've got a tie-breaking factor, a maturity and a priority, a maturity of priority has to be ranked somewhere on the list of desirable attributes as well.
Yeah, stability and focus and priorities and things like that are good. And so, yeah, I mean,
and that was something we always heard the Browns ranked highly when they picked Mingo too. That was a guy who he thought it was silly to ever take a drink. He played video games in his room. You know, he was a football machine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so yeah. I mean, I like Orchard's persona. To me, if I were putting my draftnik hat on, I would say it feels like a very high, redundant pick. I'm not sure that edge rusher was a need, but I just don't know. So I give up. I give up on the draft. All I will say, though, Craig, and I think I just might have given you some feedback. Sorry about that. All I will say, though, is as much as they want to draft and invest in the trenches, I'm good with it. So you give me the first 3 picks on the line, I'm not going to complain.
Well, and you're the guy who is constantly talking about the history with Dallas and having Hall of Famers across the offensive line and what that means to the rest of the offense.
That's right. Yeah. I'll just. It was I'm going to repeat this. Many of your listeners have heard it, but for those who haven't,
it's worth repeating.
Yeah, I did a post when I first started blogging, probably 4 years ago. I don't even know, but the point, I started with a point. My point was it's good to invest in the offensive line. First of all, your draft picks on the offensive line have a much, much lower rate of bust, meaning they don't wash out after 5 years. You draft a first-round O-lineman, he'll be with you for 10 years. And then I took it to the next step, and I started looking at the great dynasties, like the Rams of the 60s, or the Vikings, or the one that jumped out was the Cowboys. And as I looked into it, every great team, the Niners, had at least 3 All-Pros. Every dynasty had at least 3 All-Pro O-linemen. The only outlier on that were the Steelers. And it's weird because they had Jerry Mullins, but you know, you could put Kolb and they had there was one year where the Steelers had 9 All-Pros, and I just think that the voters probably just threw up their hands and said, well, that's it. 9's the most you get. So even the Steelers
get it. Yeah.
Right, exactly. But what I realized was if you have 3 All-Pros, you're pretty much going to the Super Bowl. And I'd have to – I'll send you a link maybe, and we'll put it in the notes because it's remarkable when you look back on it. So, with the Browns now – if you consider, I called it the 3 studs rule, and we have 2 studs for sure with Mack and Thomas, and if you get 4, that's even better. So if you count Bitonio and holy smokes, I forgot the guy they drafted.
I always forget his name too because it's like Jordan Cameron Irving, Cameron.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. The offensive line looks good, and it really doesn't even matter who you've got at quarterback or wide receiver because when you've got time, these guys are NFL receivers and NFL quarterbacks. You give them enough time, and they'll produce for you. And so
same with those running backs.
Yep.
And that's not to say that Emmitt Smith isn't a good or great running back, but he was certainly made to be even better by that offensive line.
Right. Well,
whatever he was, which was something good.
Well, my contention is he was vastly overrated, but yeah, I mean I wish I had a better memory, Craig, because that Cowboys line with Aikman in front of Aikman had, Larry Allen, Stepnowski, Moose Johnson, whoever their tight end was an All-Pro, and 2 more. It was remarkable. Their front, they had like. Out of 8 positions, maybe 7 were not Pro Bowl, but all pro. And, no wonder. And what always peeved me was Emmitt Smith was the guy who would, like, keep those footballs after he scored a touchdown, like he scored that touchdown. And I was like, every time he did that, it burned me because he should be giving those to his linemen. And he would go back to Florida and auction them off in some money-making scheme that he had. I'm not a big Emmitt Smith fan.
Apparently.
Yeah. Well, that's gross. I mean, it's a team game, and you're claiming this football as every touchdown you get is your football. That's just, yeah. It's not team.
Well, I think it's funny. Your Emmitt Smith is overrated argument is very. I think it would probably gain a little steam now. I think a lot of people would agree with you, but I had the similar feeling about Cal Ripken back when it was against the law to hate Cal Ripken. So.
Oh, I agree with you on that too. Yeah.
But
good.
Anyway.
You showed up for work. Wait, and your work is baseball. I mean, seriously.
This would be the hottest take in 1999.
Yeah. Well,
it's amazing how time enables us to have the opinions we had all along.
Yeah. No, that was yeah. I'm with you on Ripken there.
So anyway, so the Browns then finished this draft, and it felt kind of boring. It felt kind of whatever, and it was almost like the perfect reaction to the off season that they had. And I don't want to rehash all of that with you, but the one thing I do want to talk about is the great debacle that was Jordan Cameron.
Jordan Cameron?
Yeah. The night that he agreed verbally to join the Browns for their money and then took the Dolphins deal, seemingly used the Browns money to get the Dolphins to commit, and then backed out of a verbal agreement to take the Dolphins deal.
Yeah.
This was one where you couldn't defend the Browns because they were coming off their texting scandal. They were coming off a horrible season and a horrible end to the season, and Kyle Shanahan's departure was messy. And then the Jordan Cameron thing just felt like another thing on the pile. But if you really dig in, it had absolutely nothing to do with the Browns. They did absolutely nothing wrong.
Right. I mean, yeah, that was my take on it, was that it wasn't so much the Browns got manipulated as maybe the Browns reporters got manipulated, or because didn't that break over Twitter but somebody was definitely leveraged to get more money out of the Dolphins. And I think it went away because I didn't think it was the Browns that I didn't think the Browns did anything wrong.
No, it was despicable by Jordan Cameron's agent.
And it's a big name agent, isn't it, Condon?
I think that's who it was. I don't remember.
Yeah, well, that's out of character for big guys like that to do that.
But for a guy like Jordan Cameron, coming off a season where he had concussions and he missed, 5 games?
Yeah.
This is a very big contract for a guy whose time is kind of limited. And then the deal that he ends up signing with the Dolphins was, it's not incentive laden as much as it was dependent on the number of games. I can't remember the exact details, but it struck me as the kind of deal, and I wrote as much at Waiting for Next Year, that someday it'll be the kind of deal that's outlawed in the NFL, that encourages guys with history of head injury to get on the field no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't Cameron feel like the guy he's not? I mean, every one of his concussions have been just bad luck. He just gets crushed in the head,
or bad quarterback play.
Yeah. But the last one, it just was like, oh my goodness, that shouldn't. I worry for him. I don't think he's long for the league, so I'm not. He's in that zone where you might want to just think about something else.
He got $4 million to sign, $1 million fully guaranteed, and the rest of his money is per game roster bonuses. So
that's hard to say no to, I guess.
So he's going to make $156,250 per game as long as he plays. So anyway, it's
that'll pay for his early onset Alzheimer's nursing home, I guess. Because that's where those things go.
But the thing that bugged me so much was just that, the Browns The Browns had enough trouble staying out of their own way without Jordan Cameron and his agent piling on and making them look bad.
Yeah.
Through no fault of their own.
Maybe I wasn't too. I mean, I remember it happening. I never thought the Browns looked bad on that, and furthermore, I'm not down on Jim Dre and Gary Barnidge. I don't mind.
No.
Yeah, I don't mind my tight end being a tight end, a traditional block for the running back tight end, and catch a slant over the middle if you need to. I don't need Jimmy Graham. I mean,
no. Everybody needs Jimmy Graham, but there's only one Jimmy Graham. That's the problem. You can't go looking for the poor man's Jimmy Graham and then chase.
Right.
You know? Right. Jordan Cameron's not the dynamic playmaker that Jimmy Graham is. He's a little bit faster than linebackers. And so everyone's like, he could be like Jimmy Graham. And that's just not how that works. Right?
Yeah.
And he's a former basketball player, so he's Antonio Gates. No, that's not how that works.
That was actually kind of how it works. I remember when he was drafted in his
in the 4th round, yeah.
But his draft clip on YouTube was him jumping over a car with Blake Griffin doing slam dunks.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was, but yeah,
it's good. It's a good way to get drafted. It's after that, it doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot.
I mean, I was about to hold forth on tight ends going down over the top, splitting the seam, opening up space, creating space. And it gets back to this. I don't know. I just don't know anymore. I mean, there was a time probably 2 years ago where I think it was really important to have an over-the-top threat down the middle from the tight end position. Now, I don't know. I just don't know. I mean, watching Browns football does this to you.
It's important if you've got the guy who can do it and do it really well. It's not important if it takes up valuable salary cap space and roster space for a guy who can't do it and stay healthy and et cetera, et cetera.
You know, I just question everything anymore, though, Craig. It's like I wanted real fast guys over the top, and now, after last year, I just want a Miles Austin to go find an open spot in the zone and sit there and catch a pass. And I know Miles Austin's gone, but that's why a Heartline, that's fine. That's cool, you know?
Right. But it's I want whatever works. And
exactly
whatever combination of players the Browns have versus whatever kind of defense they're facing, they're going to have to do different things. And so this idea that, well, we're going to be this and we're going to impose that on everybody is silly. I mean, anyway.
They're all interrelated. And speaking of the Dolphins, look, what's Mike Wallace done now that he's not part of an integrated offense that knows
Didn't
how
he
to
get traded in Minnesota too?
Did he?
I don't know. I thought he got traded.
I don't know.
Goes to show what
this has been the least illuminating. Well, it's been a very honest podcast, though, Craig, because I'm completely out of the closet with I don't know anything, and I readily
he got traded to the Minnesota Vikings. So Bridgewater is a happy man until he realizes that it's not going to help.
I still think Bridgewater is going to get exposed, but I just kind of keep that on the down low. I'm still not sold on Teddy Bridgewater. Much bigger on Derek Carr.
So the Dolphins traded Wallace and their 7th round pick to the Vikings in exchange for the 5th round pick.
Wow.
That's the cost of clearing the cap space.
That's costly.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, they signed him to a 5-year, $60 million deal in 2013. He played 2 seasons. And they beg another team to take his contract.
Didn't they also? That was the same year that they overpaid for Dan. I'm going to call him Danielle. Maybe it's Danelle. Ellerby took him away from the Ravens, and he didn't do much for them either. And yet, I just saw something this morning where somebody's picking the Dolphins to win the AFC East. So I don't know.
Well, and let's not pretend like Mike Wallace was a horrible disaster. He had 930 yards and 862 yards and 5 touchdowns, and he had 10 touchdowns in 2014. That's not $12 million worth, but that's okay.
Well, the thing is, though, is that
what did Dwayne Bowe do last year?
I don't know, but it tells you how important Antonio Brown was.
Yes.
To take him away from Mike Wallace, and Mike Wallace is just a guy. He's who's our fast guy? I don't know.
Taylor Gabriel? No.
Yes, that's who I was going to say. Yeah.
All right. Well, we've waited long enough. Let's talk about Tom Brady and the Patriots penalties, because I think you're going to feel bad about this take someday that you think they should cancel out the Super Bowl victory.
Yeah. Well, no, I think it should have been forfeited the day after, and the Colts should have gone.
Oh. So, they should have forfeited the AFC Championship game, and the Colts should have gone.
Right.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. You're crazy.
Well, they got rewarded they cheated.
No. You can't just say they cheated, because that would be like saying they broke the law. Which law? Did they murder somebody?
This is a capital offense.
No, it's not. The NFL legalized jaywalking, and this is the example I've used. I'm going to do it again, and then you can react to it. So, this is jaywalking, and the NFL legalized it. They basically said they didn't care when they bent to the wishes of Tom Brady and Peyton Manning and the quarterbacks who didn't want to be at a disadvantage when they're the road team. And they said, look, you're in charge of your own footballs. And so the NFL said, basically, we don't find this to be important. And they set some guidelines, and they had the refs checking. But overall, it was obviously not of utmost importance to the NFL. And they didn't think it was ripe for abuse, because that's pretty much the way they treated it. And then the issue came to the forefront. People started complaining and talking about the Patriots and reporting them to the league office. And rather than just coming out and saying, hey, look, we don't think anybody should be jaywalking. We're going to start enforcing. We're going to check on it. They could have had 100% compliance before that AFC Championship game if the NFL had just not played cloak and dagger, not set up. They set up a sting operation to catch some. Hang on, hang on. They set up a sting operation to catch somebody jaywalking, and then made an example out of that jaywalker by putting them in jail for it.
Okay, can I go?
Yeah, sure.
It's not jaywalking; it's drunk driving, and in my state.
How is it drunk driving?
In my state, the limit for drunk driving is a blood alcohol content of 0.085. If you're 0.084, you're good, but there is a line that is defined because it's an important line. It's 0.085. Might be arbitrary, but it's a line, and you cannot go over it, or else you get your license suspended for 6 months. I know. So that's number one. As far as so the minimum inflation pressure is a rule that everyone plays by, just like a drunk driving rule. And the reason it's drunk driving and not jaywalking is because the ball is in play every play of the game, and it's being touched by the quarterback every play of the game. And so there's 60 plays where the Patriots have an advantage, and 60 plays where Andrew Luck has this rock hard ball because he's playing by the rules. And so it's a significant advantage. It is not fair to say it didn't have a material impact on the game, because you don't know whether it did or didn't. Maybe if Brady was playing with harder balls, he throws a couple pick sixes, and it's a completely different game. So this premise that it had no effect on the game is out of line. Now, you made a point also that the Pats should have been told, hey, heads up, we're going to be checking for the inflation. Well, I think this goes on every game where a coach gets to the refs and says, okay, the right guard has been chop blocking. We've seen this on film, so we'd like you to look for that play throughout the course of the game. that ref does not go over to the bench and say, hey, cool it on the chop blocking. We're going to be looking for. That is not how it's played.
Hang on a second, though.
And so it's appropriate for them to bring it to the
a chop block.
It was not a sting operation.
It was because instead of
it was not.
Let me finish.
Is the Wells report lying? I mean, they said that DeQuell Jackson had intercepted the ball and brought it to the sideline, and that's when they brought it to.
They've been contacting the league office.
That's what initiated Craig. That's what initiated the investigation. Now you can call the Wells report dishonest, but I don't think you have any basis to do so because that's what the Wells report says.
I don't think it's dishonest. I don't think it's as big an infraction as you apparently seem to think it is. I think that the NFL admitted as much that this isn't that big of a deal when they allowed everybody to have control of their own footballs. And yes, I know there were guidelines beyond that. And yes, I know the Patriots went over the guideline.
It's not a guideline. It's a rule. It's a law.
Stop screaming at me and let me finish the sentence. I know they went over the line. I know they went over the line of the rule.
If I said that to my judge when he gave me my suspended sentence for drunk driving,
I don't agree it's a DUI.
Say, oh, I'm sorry you went over the line. 6 months. You know? Anyway, I'm trying to think of a scenario that's a parallel where I could make somebody like you say, okay, yeah, a forfeit is appropriate. And the best I can come up with where the Patriots materially impact the playing conditions to their advantage and to the other team's disadvantage is what if there was a telescoping crossbar. And so in the quarters where the Colts were kicking at this crossbar, it was like 3 feet narrower. And you found out about it after the game. In a situation like that, should the Patriots have to forfeit?
Yeah.
Well, good. So there is a scenario because, well,
I don't agree. We're never going to agree. Hang on, you got to listen. This is the problem with you not wearing. This is the problem with you not wearing headphones. This is the problem. Hang on. This is the problem with you not wearing headphones because you don't hear me and you just talk over me. No, the problem is that you and I are never going to agree on the severity of the infraction, apparently.
I challenge you in January, you can do it in Cleveland, to go take 2 footballs, one that's inflated to regulation specs and one that's like 2 pounds per square inch less, and go grip them and throw spirals with them. And then you'll be able to make a better judgment about whether or not this is a real deal or not, because it is a real deal. Otherwise, why do the Patriots do it?
If it was a real deal, why would the NFL change the rule and allow every team to control their own ball?
Why didn't the Colts do it?
They had the control of their own ball.
They didn't deflate their balls. They played by the rules.
I agree with everything.
That everyone does it is wrong also, and it doesn't make it right anyway.
No, but the premise that everybody is looking for small advantages and the Patriots went over the line, I agree, but the severity and the size of the infraction is what we don't agree on. At least recognize where our disagreement is.
My disagreement is with your word choice. It's not going over the line. It's cheating. Even Mike Pettin said so. That's one of the things I liked about Pettin. He called it cheating.
It drives me crazy that it feels
cheating.
It feels like hiding. It feels like hiding. It's because cheating is not cheating is not cheating. It's not. Is holding cheating?
Blatant cheating. When you're afraid to call it what it is, it's not gamesmanship. It's cheating. This is cheating.
I know it's cheating, but you want to punish all cheating like he's got there's having a nail file in your back pocket as a pitcher on the mound, and then there's trying to keep a scuffed ball that hit the dirt in play by the catcher. Is that cheating? They're both cheating. But one is you should be suspended for a month, and the other is, umpire needs to catch the fact that the catcher threw a ball back that was scuffed in the dirt. Cheating is not cheating is not cheating. They're all different shades of cheating.
I think you're trying to excuse a real flagrant abuse of the rules here, of cheating. And, if we want to stop cheating, if we want to stop this ball inflation, the penalty. Here's what I go back to, because I'm a golfer. And in the 67 Masters, Robert DiVincenzo had an error on his scorecard. And he signed his card, and he got disqualified, lost the Masters. Pretty severe penalty, but it's a gentleman's game. You're supposed to submit the correct score. You're on your honor to do so, and the penalty for not doing so is disqualification. That's that.
That's stupid. That's stupid.
A non-golfer would say that.
No, I used to be a golfer, and I'm telling you that's stupid because it's taking what actually happened in the universe and disqualifying what we all know actually happened on a technicality. It's like vacating a win. It's stupid.
Well, nobody signs a wrong scorecard anymore.
I still think it's stupid. And so what? He didn't cheat. He made a mistake. That's not cheating. It's cheating to sign a wrong scorecard to try and get a score that you don't deserve.
The point is, okay, that the rules are in place and we live by the rules and they're there to protect everyone.
And I attack stupid rules all the time.
This rule is in place to protect the Colts in this case, and the Colts are aggrieved. They had to play at a disadvantage the whole first half. The whole game might have been different if the Colts had not had to play at that disadvantage. The game should be forfeited. It's very clear. Patriots went on to win the Super Bowl, and now they're crying about having to pay a fine and a draft pick after winning the Super Bowl after cheating. They got rewarded for cheating because they won the Super Bowl. So I don't think the punishment that they're getting now is egregious. I don't think it fits the crime whatsoever. They should never have played in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's all so far over the top in my worldview.
Well, the reason my working premise on why it didn't happen was because it would cause so much disruption for people to change their plans. It was inconvenient. If this had happened in Game 2 of a regular season game, it probably would have been a forfeit.
I don't think so. I think that they would just have I think the suspension of Tom Brady is ridiculous. I think it's an organizational problem, and I think you can punish the organization or you can punish the individual if you think that was the individual. I think it's very weird to punish both the organization and the individual.
I mean, punishing that particular individual does punish the organization. There's that. That's also, in terms of punishing the organization, those draft picks play a part there as well. And I think if Roger Goodell was more like David Stern, Kraft would be looking at about $10 million in fines by now. He needs to be quiet. How did he be?
Who's this?
Robert Kraft.
Oh. Well, I guess the last thing that I would say, and obviously you don't have to listen to me. You can keep going with whatever view of it that you want to have. But when I read the former quarterbacks and their take on it, that's the only perspective I can think of that's important in terms of figuring out what kind of an advantage, what level of cheating it actually is. And it is cheating. We agree on that. They bent the rules. They cheated, whatever you want to say. But guys like Dan Marino, Steve Young, they think it's bending the rules more than just flat out blatant cheating, need to forfeit the Super Bowl kind of cheating.
Hey, I drove drunk many times before I got pulled over. That didn't make it right when I got pulled over. And that didn't make my punishment less severe when I did get caught. So, there's a risk-reward thing. They knew that there was a risk to this cheating and that there would be a price to pay if they got caught. That's why they were so surreptitious of it. So, yeah, we can just disagree, I guess.
Well, and I guess my point about the NFL is that it's almost like they legalize drunk driving in your scenario. They said, well, we don't live in a populated place and there's nobody on the roads around here. So, yeah, we know there's a limit, but we're not going to check. We're canceling all checkpoints. That's well, I don't like your drunk driving scenario.
I think it's the appropriate one though, Craig. This is not jaywalking. This is a lot more serious than that. Well, jaywalking is like the holding, if you or a hands to the face of the way people wage war in the trenches is jaywalking. It was a cold and rainy day, and those things when they're full are hard to grip. That's why hand size is such a big deal. That's why Nick Foles is getting paid. He has big hands so he can grip the ball. That's why, small-handed quarterbacks are dinged in the draft, is because it's hard to grip a football if your hands aren't big. So you need an edge, or if you can get an edge, it's a big deal. A big deal, I say again.
Well, and I think one thing maybe we can agree upon is that the way the NFL handled it has made it an even bigger deal. If they wanted to really minimize this, I think they could have done a far superior job to what they actually did. And I think we might all be better off if they had done more to minimize this and kind of make it go away without it culminating in a giant investigation and giant penalties. If they would have just stepped in and tried to, forewarn to make it stop ahead of time, I think everybody would have been better off.
Well, again, that's, or it would have been better if the Patriots hadn't cheated. There's that.
That's
right.
That's infantile.
Why are you making excuses for these cheaters? It's not the first time they've done it either. Apparently,
well, because this isn't the way I viewed it. It's nowhere near as bad as filming your opponent.
I disagree. I
disagree with you, but I think it's worse than pumping in crowd noise like Atlanta did. So that's where I placed it on the spectrum.
Filming the opponent, they could just have somebody in the stands taking notes. That to me,
no, filming their practices and walkthrough. Nobody was allowed to be in the stands.
Yeah, well, that really didn't bother me. This is during the game. Andrew Luck has to play with different balls than Tom Brady at a different air pressure. It's on a cold, wet New England night in January. Big deal. Very big deal. Every play of the first half, a disadvantage for the Colts. Every play.
I got you.
That's so different from filming.
But they'd been talking about the issue for months, and the NFL decided to wait and try and catch in the act.
So you say the Wells report says different. That's what Boston Talk Radio says. It's a big conspiracy because everyone hates the Patriots. No, the Patriots cheated.
Well, it's not a conspiracy that everybody hates the Patriots. It's just a bumbling. It's another bumbling by the NFL in the way they handle their business.
It's another cheat by the Patriots.
It is. It's.
So why does the NFL have culpability for enforcing their rules? Why are the NFL the bad guy here? They're not. The Patriots are the bad guy.
Well, we're just going to have to agree to disagree on the finer points.
Yeah, no problem.
But I appreciate how fired up you get in our discussions.
This was not our best podcast, Craig.
Are you kidding? People are going to love this.
Oh, they're going to hate it.
Mostly because they disagree with you and you're wrong.
As far as I can tell, a poll of Twitter, there's Art Broseph, me, and Mike Pettin are the only ones on the same page with this.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, we'll see. We'll see, because I don't think all this is done yet. I'm sure all these penalties are not going to all hold up.
I hope Goodell finds Robert Kraft. I might actually do a piece on him. I do not know how he became a power broker within NFL ownership circles. The guy got his money from his wife's family, and we've all seen him running through the lines with his girlfriend there, and his performance throughout this has not been graceful. That's being euphemistic. So, if I were Goodell, I'd be fining him. So,
which is such a weird thing because it's also his boss. But the NFL is such a. I love football. All this other stuff is so obnoxious, man. So obnoxious. The Browns' offseason was so obnoxious because there was no football. Even losses are easier because, those are kind of like self-contained negativities that we can talk about. But this open-ended offseason where players are all out and about, in rehab or doing whatever they're doing, and the organization's trying to sign players who are out there, presumably reneging on deals and all this other stuff. None of it has much to do with actual football, and I'm sure this is something else Mike Pettin would agree with me on, or us on. Just get these guys on the field. Let's work on X's and O's, something that's working toward actual football and not this other distraction.
And not to mention the new vibrant orange that's kind of red, and those. We don't even have to go into the football into the uniforms, Craig. No. I know you know where I am on that. So,
well, and that's a good place to leave it. Thanks so much, Mike. Sorry it's been so long.
I'm sorry it took so long too, and I'm sorry this went so long. But
no, it's been great. I appreciate the lively debate, and we'll do it again soon. Hopefully, with real, actual live football to talk about.
Okay, brother.
All right. Until next time, everybody. Thanks for listening. It's been the WaitingForNextYear.com podcast.
Waiting for next year.